This is the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. It is Season 5, Episode 3. Welcome to the podcast. I look forward to talking to my guest today, Catherine McBride, who is a food and health writer. I've known Catherine McBride largely from social media and her website emails that I get weekly. I've always enjoyed her writing, and I thought I'd get a chance to talk to her, so I invited her to be on the podcast, and she was a great guest. I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to her, and I even found out that she was a chef, a local. She lived here in the Bay Area, and she was a chef at Chez. She now resides in Kansas. So without further ado, we're going to go right to the podcast. I hope you really enjoy this, and here we go. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. Today, I'm very happy to have on my show Catherine McBride, who is a food writer and also has the Fresh Cornbread newsletter, and she's written lots of articles for publications. Catherine, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really enjoying. I think I first saw you on Twitter, where I usually give you a hard time. You ask what food is this, and I usually answer something stupid. And then I think I followed and I found your website, and then I got your Fresh Cornbread newsletter, and so I've been really becoming a fan. So I want you to, if you can, tell our listeners a little bit about you and your work, and we'll go on from there.
So I formerly worked as a professional chef, and in recent years really just cook for myself and friends and family, but really just love exploring food. I read cookbooks all the time. I'm always listening to other podcasts about food, and just really love connecting with people about food. And so being on Twitter and Instagram has really allowed me to connect to people all around the world and hear about what they're eating and what the food traditions are in their area. And it's just really, I just love that. So,
Me too.
Yeah.
Now, what time in your life, was it like in your childhood or adulthood? When did you get attracted to food and think it might be something you might want to do career-wise or work with career-wise?
I grew up cooking with my parents. We didn't eat out almost ever. So we cooked a lot. I definitely remember very early on being in the kitchen with my mom, standing on a chair at the countertop, cooking, and just really appreciating homemade food. That was just really our normal. And It wasn't until I was in college, I studied French and spent a semester abroad in France. And that was the first time I'd ever left the country, first time anyone in my family had ever left the country. And just fell in love with the food over there. It just really fascinating to see just kind of the status of chefs there and just how focused people are on having really high quality food. I went to farmers markets there and traveled around the country and just came back being really sure that I wanted to go to culinary school. Much to the disappointment of my family, actually, who were hoping for a more, you know, a more prestigious career like a doctor or a lawyer or such. So, but anyways, I was in a bachelor's degree program. I finished that program and then immediately went to culinary school. So it was just, when you're passionate about something, it doesn't matter who's telling you that it's not a good idea. So.
Families, though, what are you going to do? It's funny. There's so many people that I talk to that are writers or artists or actors, and they all have that moment where their relatives are like, wouldn't you rather do something else? Maybe it's more lucrative. Like, you could do this on the side, but maybe you could do, and they always like try and do that stuff. And it's, as a parent, I can understand that, but I try and be careful of that too, because I don't want to, how you wonder how many careers were squelched because, people like said, oh, to hell, I'll become an insurance agent, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I understand it, on the one hand, especially having been through the industry, it's hard. It can be a very hard life,
Yeah,
but
especially
it can
now.
also be a hard life to not be passionate about what you're doing. So,
Yeah.
So there's a fine line there, I guess.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about your time. You mentioned you were a classically trained chef. Tell us about that. How was that for you?
Yeah, so I went through an associate's degree program here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I live now, and at a place called Sullivan University. Um,
I got to
and
stop you there. Hold on. So, are you doing okay? Like, I've heard about Kentucky in the news and everything. Are you guys okay? I mean, I didn't know that
yeah,
when I talked to you that you were in Kentucky. I feel stupid now. But
oh
yeah,
no, that's okay. Yeah, it's kind of surreal. And it's interesting. I mean, Kentucky is kind of a big state. It's sort of shaped like a triangle. I'm
right.
in Louisville, which is sort of up towards the top of the triangle,
Yeah,
facing north. If the triangle's facing north, it's kind of up towards the top. So really, the tornadoes hit Western Kentucky,
right.
which is probably like three to 4 hours where from where I am, 3 to 4 hours drive. But I'm actually like halfway watching my phone right now because I'm supposed to be doing some volunteering this afternoon. I might be going down there to help with some stuff. So yeah, it's a little tricky. So where I'm at in Kentucky, we are a little far away from where the tornadoes hit, but still, a lot of people here are heading down there to try to help. So yeah, it's kind of, but we really weren't impacted here in Louisville, so it's just really strange to see the pictures, because it's like a whole different world down there. So yeah,
So, yeah, thank you for that. I was curious because I was like, I've heard so much about it living outside of it. I think it's like the wildfires here in California. If you live outside
yeah,
of California, you're not sure how it plays out or anything.
exactly. Yeah, it's very strange. Yeah.
So,
So
about your training as a chef in Louisville.
yeah, so yeah, it was interesting for me, like in a lot of ways, having come out of a bachelor's degree program. I mean, I guess I was like 21 when I started culinary school, which seemed fairly young, but there were a lot of people who that was their first college experience. So they were coming in at 18, you know,
Right.
which is only a few years different, but those are really critical years, So for me, it was like I was kind of one of the older students, which is really interesting. And I think I was kind of approaching it from like an academic perspective, like I just need to gain all this knowledge. But culinary school is definitely I mean, it's very hands-on, I mean, you were in the kitchen on day one, and adjusting to that life, I remember we had my first class was it started at 7 in the morning and it went for 4 hours. I mean, we were in the kitchen for 4 hours, which I mean, if you're going to be a professional chef, that's nothing, But if you're
Oh
coming
yeah.
from a place where you've been like sitting in front of a computer typing out term papers, 4 hours in the kitchen without any break, running around is kind of exhausting, So it was physically difficult on me. I mean, it was very evident that that was something I really hadn't done that much of. So, but also exhilarating. I mean, I was just learning all these things I'd wanted to learn and, um, just, yeah, absorbing all this knowledge of food and techniques. I mean, we were starting with sauces, all the classic French sauces, you have the mother sauces, and there's like 200 sauces that come off of that. I mean, it's just a whole world to dive into, which um, honestly, a lot of that I haven't used since. But still, it was so amazing to kind of, again, tap into this French culinary history, of people who've been developing these complex recipes. They're hundreds of years old. It's just really amazing to jump into that and be like, wow, I don't know anything. Very humbling, I guess. Yeah.
I can imagine. So tell us how you transitioned to be a freelance food writer.
Yeah, so that's been really like a roundabout kind of thing for me. So, I mean, I worked in restaurants and doing catering for quite a few years, and then got a little worn out. Developed some back problems, some feet problems. Just got tired of working every single holiday, never seeing my friends. And yeah, I mean, it comes down to kind of what my parents said. It doesn't pay that well, like even at the highest levels, despite
Right.
the fact that we see people on the Food Network and, stars who have their own cookware lines. Like the majority of people are just hustling really hard for not much. So, so I stepped
Yeah.
away for a little bit. Um, and then actually ended up getting a master's in social work and getting into doing grant writing. And so did that for quite a few years. I actually do medical writing now as my main gig. But in recent years, yeah, I wanted to keep a foot in the food world, so um, just yeah, connected with some folks at a local publication called Edible Louisville,
Yeah.
which is really focused on farm to table farmers. There's just been a lot of really great things happening in my area in recent years with people actually being aware of the fact that like we do have farmland just outside of the city, so farmers can pop in and bring all sorts of wonderful things. And so stuff that has been common in other places for a while is really starting here, like CSAs, and we're getting more and more farmers markets, and there's more and more farm to table restaurants opening. And it's really, I mean, that's really very close to my heart in terms of the kind of cooking that I like to do. So that's really inspired me um, to want to tell some of those stories. So
Do you think the food scene in the South is changing? Because you write for a publication, Edible, and I know you probably make a lot of contacts and people or have friends in the food industry of the world there. Do you think it's changing in the South? Because I've been seeing a lot, like there's a Southern Foodway Alliance, and then
mhm.
there's there's like a resurgent on roots cooking and discovering the origins of American cooking in the South. Do you think things are changing? Because I'm seeing like books about people, about chefs from New York moving to the South and opening restaurants and trying to like cook local cuisine. What's happening there that you perceived?
Yeah, I definitely think things have changed. I mean, I went to culinary school here in Kentucky, but then I actually left and moved out to California for a while.
Oh, really? Where?
I
Where'd you
think
live?
so. I lived around the Bay Area.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, so I was in Half Moon Bay for a while,
Oh, I love Half Moon Bay.
making wedding cakes for destination weddings.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And then, I was in San Francisco for a while, and I was in Berkeley for a while. So,
Oh my God, that's nearby where
um,
we're at.
oh, cool. Yeah.
I'm in
So,
Emeryville, so
oh yeah. I actually, yeah, I know exactly where that is. But yeah. So I think like I think like a lot of people. I mean, I came here. I thought it was cool. I enjoyed it. But then I left.
yeah.
Like I kind of felt like the cool food things are happening somewhere else. And so it is really interesting for me to then come back here and see all the cool things that are happening here. And I do think there's been a shift. I mean, I didn't grow up in Kentucky, didn't grow up in the South. I grew up in Chicago, but over the time that I've lived here, I definitely think there's a new appreciation for Southern food and for what we can actually offer here rather than saying, let's try to be like someplace else, because I think I mean, I'm an outsider, but I feel like the South can kind of struggle with wanting to um, be, kind of an important place to be, basically. Like what makes us impressive, And I think people are starting to answer that question and saying like there's identities here, and the South is a huge area, obviously, but like in Kentucky, I think people have started to really appreciate like what Kentucky is and what it can offer, rather than saying the standard that we're being held to is whether we can import fancy seafood from Maine or whatever. Like we have our own things. We have cornbread, we have sorghum, we have our own regional food traditions, and we can elevate that. That can be fancy food. That doesn't just have to be like your down home barbecue place. We can actually elevate that and have it be fine dining, but it's Southern fine dining. And I think that's the concept that I've seen really grow in recent years is that, those dishes don't have to be considered just like cheap basic food, that this is high quality food. Like it just came from the farm and you know, um, we've dressed it up a little bit, but it's good Southern food, and
Yeah.
people are actually looking to have that now, which is just kind of a revelation, I think, for a lot of people here. Like, oh wow, like you're coming here to eat our food, and paying good money for it, and I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I know when I visit the South, ultimately, I have destinations in mind food wise to go. And it's
Mhm.
weird because I listen to a lot of podcasts like Gravy is one, the Southern Foodway Alliance. They talk to a lot of chefs and stuff in the South. And it's weird because I'll hear them talking about something like they'll be making local barbecue with like local meat, but then they'll be pairing it with like kimchi made with like ramps, and they'll be having like a Napa wine. And it's like this weird fusion. And it's really cool to watch because it seems to be a
Yeah.
really exciting place to be right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting to kind of yeah, sort of figure out what mix of things you want from where you are and from somewhere else, what goes together. There's definitely like just a lot of new concepts, people doing really interesting things. So it's exciting.
I really like your presence on social media. You have a really great Instagram page and a really great Twitter page. And I really
Mhm.
like what you do on there. Have you made like a lot of friends and contacts? You seem to have a large following there.
Yeah, I really have. I mean, I originally joined Twitter, I guess, or I started getting active on Twitter really like around early, maybe 2019, I think. But I basically got on there with the intention of trying to connect to editors of food publications, hoping to see if they had calls for pitches, you know, for stories and that kind of thing. And then when the pandemic hit, I found that I really was just craving that connection that I think we all have been craving. And being able to talk to other people about food was really helped me emotionally and kind of helped motivate me to come up with things to post on there, you know, and it's been really amazing, like the things that have come out of it. You know, obviously I've connected to you because of it, and I've had a lot of yeah, other really neat connections. I mean, I'm really surprised. I wouldn't. I was very kind of cynical about Twitter, I guess, before I got
Yeah.
on there. I thought, oh, this is just, you know, however many characters you get, 180 characters. This is very soundbite society. Like, there's no real depth there, but all sorts of people on there, and it's really cool. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I don't know where I'll take it, but it's come up with a life of its own now. So you know,
But
if I don't post, like if there's a day when I don't post, like people will start tagging me, like, "Are you okay?" They're messaging me, and I'm like, "Oh wow, okay."
well, there's so much
I feel
negativity on social media. It's nice. You're kind of like an island in the storm
oh
because there's so
thanks
much bad stuff there. And even I get caught up. Like I start wanting to post political posts and I want to start
yeah
screaming. And I've actually canceled 2 accounts because of that. And I
oh
said,
wow
this one, I'm just going to do food and like my blog and my podcast. And so I really enjoying talking to people about food, but then it's so easy to sneak back into the politics start sneaking back. And it just becomes a screaming match where you're kind of talking to your echo chamber and blocking people. So your posts are really pleasant and always very upbeat. And it kind of like it's like a jarring experience in all the negativity. Then you see the good stuff. It's like, this is nice. This is what we're here for. This is why I'm here. This is why I came here.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to bring that in, and it helps me too to not get caught up in the muck, you know. So try to keep it peaceful, and I think people understand that and they respond to that. So, uh, but it's a fine line. I mean, I have had unfortunately block a few people and had to
Yeah.
kind of, you know, rein in a few people, say, hey, you need to, you know, we need to keep this conversation civil because, you know, food can connect to politics very quickly or people's opinions about food. They can start bashing somebody else's food likes or whatever. You know, and I'm like, that's not what this is about. This is about us being curious, about connecting and saying, okay, you know, if you want to eat that, that's fine. I may not, but so what? You know, like it's not, we don't have to ultimately decide like what is tasty and what is not tasty. Like it's not, it's kind of ridiculous, you know. So I try to kind of fend that off with like poking a little fun at them or you know or myself or you know it's an interesting process so but yeah I try.
It's weird because like I know a lot of people that post, a lot of women that post on there, and like they'll be just posting about library stuff, and then some guy will be like, they'll DM and go, "Hey, baby," and they're like,
Oh
"Come
yeah.
on, I'm just doing library posts. I'm not here to
I
meet
know.
people. Will you please stop?"
I
And
know.
these guys are like coming out of the woodwork. They're like, "Oh, hey, you're hot," you know, and it's like it brings out a lot of real weirdos and stuff. And I think people like I've seen people just say like, "I like this movie," or "I like this book," or "I like this food," and somebody's like, "Oh, I hate that. You're an idiot," blah blah blah, and you're like, "Geez, I just said." I like this movie. And now you hate me? You have a fatwa against me? Like, I don't understand.
I know, and I think it's so tricky. I try to remember that we're all on there because we want attention, and attention is a need for connection. Like we're all trying to connect. And if people aren't getting that connection, that attention in a good way, they're going to do whatever they can. I hate to say it, but it's kind of like a whiny child having a temper tantrum, they'll do whatever it takes to get the attention that they crave. So I try to give people attention for good things, like come back, say something nice, I'll give you good attention, but if you keep persisting. So yeah, I mean, I get my fair share of, lewd DMs, and I give them a few chances, and I say, okay, no, that's not what I'm here for, So, but yeah, I mean, you put yourself out there, and it's weird for me. I'm a pretty private person, and so it's been a real transition for me putting myself out there in this way. So it can be a little odd at times. I mean, there's definitely times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm out there. Like, this is all public, I've had friends who were like, yeah, I figure out if you're awake in the morning because you post on Twitter, It's like people can kind of keep tabs on me, and that's
Oh
a
my
little
God,
weird,
I didn't think of that.
you know?
And they're
So,
knocking on your door. I know you're up. I know you're in
right,
there.
exactly, so it's a little strange, but I mean, that's kind of the world that I think we're all dealing with right now.
Oh
So,
my God.
um, yeah, I haven't fully processed the implications of it sometimes, but
Now, you
yeah.
always post really great photos of produce. Do you garden?
So I have for many years. Yeah, I actually, unfortunately, I just moved about 6 months ago, um, just within Louisville, but I had lived in my previous house for, I guess, about 8 years, and had a really great garden that I established. Like I had raised beds, I had brambles like raspberries, blackberries, fig
Hmm.
bushes, all sorts of wonderful things that take a while to get established. And I was sad to leave the house, but I was even sadder to leave my garden because once you get all that set up,
Yeah, that would
So
really
I'm
suck.
starting from scratch.
I'd be like, I don't know if I could do this.
Yeah, it's tough, so that's one of my projects this winter is kind of get that reestablished or start that process. But I also do like a lot of, I mean, I help other people with their gardens, and I do a lot of foraging and that kind of thing. So there's always food at the ready, So, but yeah, I love growing food. So just can't get any fresher than I picked it myself right off this tree,
Yeah,
So.
I've done foraging myself. What can you forage? What I'm not. I mean, I've been through Kentucky. I've been there more than once. And but what is the local things? Like you mentioned brambles and stuff, but what are some of the things you can forage where you're at?
Well, yeah, lots of things. In fact, I keep learning more about it, um, which is amazing because we have just so many wild areas. Like even within the city, there's just areas where there's just nothing, no buildings or anything. But some of my favorites are pawpaws. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah, yeah,
those.
very much. So
Oh
yeah, they
man,
grow around
yeah,
here all
those.
over the place.
Oh great, yeah, those are really common here. One of my absolute favorites. Um, persimmons. We have some native persimmons, which are really incredible.
No, those are the
Um,
they're not the fuyu. They're the other
no,
type.
they're the hachias. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like a native hachia. So they're real small, but oh, they're so delicious. So, um, and yeah, I mean all sorts of other things like ramps, very common here.
There's like a ramp
So
season. I always hear about ramp season or people getting wild ramps and stuff all over the place.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm learning a few things about mushrooms, but that's always kind of a little bit of a nerve-wracking,
I'm too much of a
thing to
coward.
forge.
I'd take
Yeah,
one by. I'm like, I'm dying. 911. I'd be
I
awful.
know. Yeah. But I have a lot of friends who are very knowledgeable mushroom hunters. So if one of them's with me, or there's a few things, that I'm familiar with that I feel good about. Um, but yeah, I continue to learn more about foraging, and things that you can make with, that I didn't really know that much about. So, or like sassafras, that's another one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah,
Sassafras roots,
sassafras
amazing.
tea. Oh yeah, you can make all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff. It's a great flavoring, and Isn't it used for gumbo?
I think it is used in gumbo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I feel like it might be connected
Filet?
to filet. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I've never figured out there's so much to know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I love
Yeah.
about food. It's just so much to know. So
Now, when you're eating mushrooms with friends that have foraged them, do you ever like everybody's going to eat and you like lift the fork up and you wait to see everybody eat first?
yeah,
And you
I
act
think
like you're
that's a
gonna
good
eat.
strategy.
You're like, oh, I have to put that down again and wait. And
Yeah.
you're like hovering and like looking to see.
Yeah, good idea to kind of wait.
Like, you guys go ahead. I'll do the starter first. I'll be
Yeah,
right with you though.
exactly. Yeah.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Totally.
Now, tell me about some of the food writers that you follow, either in print or online or anywhere.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I'm not always good at remembering people's names.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That's kind of
Um,
I threw you a curveball there.
no, that's good. Yeah, no, that's good. I recently stumbled upon the Twitter account of Lauren Coe, who wrote a book. I actually have it next to me because I was just reading it a little bit ago. She has this Instagram page called Pieometry, which
Oh
are
yeah, yeah,
these
yeah,
like
yeah.
amazing geometrically designed pies and tarts, and that's just been like eye candy for me the last few days since I stumbled upon her account. And I love pies. I'm just really into pies. So that's been really fun just to see her fresh approach to designing pies and tarts and just looking at ingredients in kind of a new way, just from yeah, cutting things out into different shapes and things, and that's been fun. Yeah, I've got like I have piles of cookbooks everywhere. I've also been reading a book that came out recently by Bryant Terry called Black Food. It's been a
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
interesting
yeah.
dive into a lot of different food traditions that I'm not as familiar with, and so it's been really neat reading that. Uh,
I think you may have frozen. Are you still there?
I am still here, but yeah,
Gotcha,
your video is
gotcha.
frozen.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, you're back now.
Good,
Or
good.
I'm back, or whoever was not here.
This happens every once in a while.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you also, tell us about the Fresh Cornbread newsletter. I've really been excited for that, and I really like getting those in my email box. Tell us about that and how you came to start it.
Yeah, so I came to start it maybe a little out of frustration. I've been wanting to do food writing. I've had some luck, I guess, in terms of connecting to folks, especially the local edible magazine. Unfortunately, they have kind of they've had some struggles basically because of COVID times in terms of getting advertising dollars, and so they've been impacted. And so basically, I've been enjoying my time on Twitter and Instagram. It's been fun, but I wanted to do some longer form writing, and not really being able to find as many publications to do it for. Decided to just kind of start my own thing. So, uh, yeah, so I really wanted to about food, what about and this is trying to concepts, and around that time discovered the local restaurant called Maza Pie. It's actually does baking classes like in their wood-fired oven. And they also have a mill where they mill their own cornmeal. And I discovered that part, the fresh cornmeal. They had this really lovely fresh cornmeal that they had smoked. So it was this lovely, like
Oh my
smoky
God.
cornmeal, which
Oh
is
my God, that sounds
really
amazing.
fascinating. Yeah, it was amazing. They had just, I don't usually buy mixes, but I stumbled upon it in a local store and made some cornbread from it. I was like, this is just so good. Like this is just, I was just like, I guess I've always thought cornbread was good, but this was just new level. It was just like so amazing. And yeah, around that time, I have a friend who likes to poke around, uh, you know, um, what's that called? Like estate sales and things like that, and auctions, and I told her I wanted a small cast iron pan. I used to have one, but I don't know where it went, and so she found me this like really nice little 8-inch cast iron pan that's perfect for cornbread, and so that just kind of gelled. So I thought, well, I'm just gonna have this newsletter be about cornbread and just kind of jump into that world. So it's been cool, and I think it's neat because again, it's one of these foods that's kind of taken for granted as being like a really basic thing, you know, kind of one of those, whatever, it's just cornbread. But I feel like it can do a lot, and if it's done right, it can just be so good. And and just kind of looking at some of the history too, of cornbread. There's a lot of history that a lot of it I still don't know. But kind of seeing the way it's fit into different food traditions and kind of what it's meant for people. So we'll kind of see it. I started it back in the spring and kind of see where it'll take me. So I'm kind of hoping to get out, maybe do some more interviews with people and maybe travel a bit around the state and sample some more cornbreads. So
Cornbread was so resonant for me growing up. My grandparents on both sides were from the South, different parts of the South, and my father's mother made cornbread on occasion, but not often. And my mother's mother always made cornbread, but she made really. It wasn't like you get at a bakery now or in like Starbucks or something. It was flatter, not as fluffy, pretty hard. Like and when it got cold, it was pretty hard. But
yeah.
we always had that with beans or something, and it was kind of used as a tool almost in a way, weirdly. So I always had that growing up, and it would always be around. But my grandmother always had a cast iron pan she'd cook it in, like you said. And I grew up now, I have my own cast iron pan, and I always tell the kids and my wife, everybody, this is my pan. Nobody touches it.
Yeah.
I never want to see any of you using it at any time. I will
Yeah.
kill you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny how something like that, like some people don't have one at all, but those who do typically are very opinionated and careful with their fans. So, yeah.
I'm always afraid I'm gonna like open the dishwasher and it's gonna be in there. I'm like
Oh,
screaming, the scream heard around the neighborhood.
yeah, seriously. It's all rusted. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
But yeah,
beautifully seasoned cast iron pan is a beautiful thing, but yeah, I understand your fears.
did you grow up with cornbread a lot in the house growing up?
I didn't. I honestly don't remember having it at all when I was growing up. I feel like the first time I remember having it was when I was in college in Iowa, actually, state known for corn.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember one of my roommates making cornbread, um, and I was like, this is amazing. I guess I just kind of had, I don't know, I feel like I had this concept of like cornbread's just kind of dried out and not that tasty. So, but she made this cornbread that had, I mean, it was a little sweet. I remember it had honey in it and stuff, but it was just so good. And I became totally obsessed with making cornbread for one year while I was in college. I mean, that was like, as people do typically in college, like either they're living off ramen noodles or whatever, like cornbread became my thing. And yeah, I was making it every few days, so, and then didn't for a while. And yeah, I guess I'm rediscovering it now. So,
You ever buy those Jiffy boxes, Jiffy cornbread, the little boxes for like five for $1? You ever hit those?
yeah, I don't. And, it's so tricky because I don't want to be a food snob
Mhm.
because, I want everyone to have access to good food and Jiffy is fine. It's food. It's, it's good, but if if people could manage to get their hands on like really good stone ground cornmeal, especially local cornmeal, like the kind of stuff that's the whole grain, the jiffy stuff that's been degerminated, it's like really has lost a lot of its flavor, which
Yeah.
makes it very shelf stable, which makes it cheap. I mean, there's reasons why we do these things, but
Yeah.
and also kind of makes it like a more uniform texture, which people, if that's what you've grown up with, that is what you think of, like as
Yeah.
cornbread. So not trying to knock anyone's food choices, but stone ground cornmeal, especially from like a local mill, it's just worlds apart,
And
I mean, it's just,
we're getting that
yeah,
now. People are returning. We're seeing more small independent corn producers that are grinding their own corn, and it's becoming a thing. Like local, you can buy local corn where you're at
yeah,
if that's available, and it's like blows my mind to see that coming back, and no longer this the big industry where it's either General Mills or whoever have you. It's somebody you could see and touch and like talk to, and that's just amazing to me.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, the tricky thing is, it's so funny. Again, cornbread seems so simple, but you start getting into it, why it is this way or that way. And I mean, the thing is, like, if you leave the germ in the grain, like it's got a lot of oil in it, and so it's gonna go rancid.
Yeah.
Not overnight, but I mean, period of weeks or months, depending on how long you hold it for. And so, so having it fresh, like thinking of it less as a shelf-stable good and more of like a fresh product,
Yeah.
starts to put the focus on like having something that's really local. So I'm actually at the moment, earlier I was I bought a bunch of flint corn, and
Oh,
I'm drying
nice.
it, and I borrowed a grinder from my friend. I'm gonna grind my own cornmeal. So again, just like pulling the fruit off the tree, there's nothing fresher than making it yourself. So I always love to try to figure out, hey, what if I do it, what if I do this myself? Like, what will that be like? So,
Now, flint corn
and
is the
again,
red. Is that a red corn? Is that like a different color?
I do have some, yeah, I have some that I bought from a local farmer it is red. It's very dark red. It's called Bloody Butcher, which is a really common
Oh,
um,
nice.
type of flint corn for cornmeal. So,
That's a great name. I
uh,
like that.
yeah, it is a really striking color red. So, I mean, a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's Indian corn. It's for decorations," but it's edible. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
probably tastes better too.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm drying it at the moment. My first attempt to grind it, I just pulled it off of the cobs because it seems so dry. It's very hard, and I just popped it into my friend's grinder and it just mucked the whole thing up because it's actually pretty wet on the inside. So again, it's a learning learning curve for me. I've never done this before, but so now I have it drying. It's been drying for a few weeks, so I'm gonna try again. So,
Um, I was going to ask you, what are you cooking for the holidays? Are you cooking anything special for the holidays?
that's a good question. Yeah, usually what I'll do is kind of curl up on the couch with a big pile of cookbooks and start to think about what would be fun. So, I have on my list today that I'm gonna make a cranberry tart, which I've never made before, but I saw
That
a
sounds
picture of
nice.
one with cranberry curd and it just looked so pretty.
That
Again, I've
sounds
been
really good.
inspired to do some fancy tarts and pies, and so I have that on my list. And yeah, I placed an order with a local farm the other day. Most of our farmers markets kind of closed down in the winter, but they have like online ordering, so you can order stuff, and they had this really great spinach. So I think I'm gonna make some spanakopita.
Ooh, nice. I love that.
Yeah, so it's just for me, it's kind of random. I don't always, follow like the traditions
Yeah.
um, of holidays, and I tend to be a little more. I'm not like a strict vegetarian per se, but I don't tend to make like a huge meat dish. I tend to have a lot of like other little things. But it's kind of random. It's like just whatever, again, to me, it's very driven by the ingredients. Like if I find some amazing spinach, like that's what I'm making, like I'm not going to go try to find whatever the thing I want is. It's whatever happens to be really good right now. So,
I love that. Now I was going to
yeah.
ask you next, any New Year's food cooking goals? Anything you want to do in the new year, like develop or work on in the new year?
Oh, that's a good question. Um,
For me, it's croissants. I'm gonna master croissants next year if it kills me. Last year
yeah.
was sourdough, and I'm
Okay.
still struggling with sourdough, but Next year it's croissants. I'm going to do it. I'm going to master it. We'll see where I am in November.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I hope you will post about that because I'd love to follow along on that journey. Yeah, croissants, I mean, they're not they're not difficult, but there is a lot of like little things, that make a big difference. So, and
Yeah.
winter is a good time to start because you don't have to worry quite as much about your butter melting on you.
No,
Not something you want to
that's a
do in
big
July in
danger.
Kentucky.
Yeah, no, that's a really huge danger where I'm at because it's so usually between 110, 120 where I'm at in the summer. So that's a
Ooh,
palpable thing.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, not the time you want to be messing with butter or yeast for that matter. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm excited to get back and doing some more bread baking. I used to do that, um, and haven't as much in recent years. So, um, I I guess it was a year or two ago. I got like a nice big ceramic baking stone for my oven,
Oh, nice.
and so I've been learning kind of how to use that. It's sort of got its own little quirks.
Yeah,
So, but I'd really love to get back into baking like some crusty breads and things. So I'm playing around with different grains, and now I have this mill that I borrowed from my friend. So I'm like, all right, maybe I mill my own flour. Got some wheat berries. So I love tools. I am like a collector of kitchen tools kind of, and I love playing around with different tools and seeing, trying to make my own things. So yeah, maybe mill my own flour and make some fancy bread.
that sounds wonderful. That's the way to
Yeah,
go because you get
yeah,
such better flavor out of it.
absolutely.
So what's next for you?
That is a good question. Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out myself. I mean, I wouldn't say I ever stepped away from cooking, but really in the last 2 or 3 years, I've gotten back into it more so. Um, so, I guess like everybody, we're kind of holding our breath to see where this pandemic journey takes us. But my hope is really to spend more time traveling around Kentucky, and kind of learning more deeply about what people are doing in other communities in the state. Because I think, like a lot of people, um, you know, I haven't been traveling as much. It's kind of forced me to stay nearby, which is kind of I'm chafing at a little bit. I wish I could travel around the U.S., but why not travel around Kentucky,
Nice. I
and
like that.
see more of what's around here. So I would love to make some visits to some of these small producers. I mean, to me, I love visiting farms and small producers and just educating myself more on kind of what it takes to make food. I mean, it's so easy for us to take that for granted. Um, and spend some more time with some of my friends who are foragers and
That's
just
great.
kind of appreciate the hyper local, and also getting my garden set up at my new space. And I actually made a connection on Twitter with somebody who lives in New Jersey who apparently brought back a certain variety of tomato from near extinction. And this last year was his first successful harvest of these tomatoes. So he's actually sending me these tomato seeds. I forgot the name of the variety. So that's going to be one of the first things in my garden.
I
So,
can't wait to see pictures of those when they come up. That's going to be
thank
awesome.
you. Appreciate that. Yeah. So just, seeing where it takes me, seeing, yeah, what adventures I can get into.
I wanted to ask this one last question. This wasn't on the list, but I wanted to ask it anyway. So for me, living in California, I talk to people who live outside of California, and they're like, they think, oh, it's just a big beach, and they think it's like all beach. And I'm like, we're actually a really big agricultural state, and it's we basically have a lot of farms here, and they don't really think of Bakersfield or Northern California up near Shasta. They don't really think of the whole big picture. When people think
Right.
of Kentucky, like what do you want to like what would you like people to know about Kentucky as somebody who lives there and has been all over Kentucky? What would you like to tell people about it, like for that are not from there?
I mean, I guess I'd really like to highlight just the amazing food traditions that we have here, and many of which I don't know that much about, because I think it's taken me a long time to fully appreciate. Um, Again, there is a huge culture of foraging here, just because that's what people had to do for so many years, especially folks east of here in the mountains. I mean, that's what people did,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they would grow things, but there's a lot of places in the mountains where they don't get a lot of sunlight. And so they kind of had to figure out ways of, you know, looking for anything that was edible. And I think as we were saying at the beginning, like I think there's become a new appreciation for those food traditions. So I have been I've been reading more and connecting more to the Southern Foodways Alliance and just understanding kind of their knowledge and appreciation of a lot of those food traditions. So um, yeah, I mean, Kentucky has so much going for it, and I just would love people to really, understand the depth of the culture here and the food culture. So
It's a beautiful state, though. People should visit. It's got a lot there. Any one
absolutely.
last question too? Again, bonus question for the listeners. What is your favorite restaurant in Kentucky?
Oh goodness. That's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a really hard one. If you have more than one, that's okay.
Yeah.
It is a hard question.
Put
If
me
you
on
ask
the
me
spot.
like, what's my favorite in the Bay Area, I'd be like, I can't answer that.
I know. Yeah, that's really difficult. Yeah, there is a restaurant that opened a few years ago that's not too far from where I live in Louisville that's called Harvest. And they are just fully farm to table focused. I mean, they
Hmm.
literally like the art in the restaurant is pictures of farms and farmers. I mean, it's like front and center, like this is what we are. And I have had some, I don't eat out that much. I mean, I like the
Yeah.
idea of eating out and I'm often inspired, but I often just have like gone to the farmer's market and have so much stuff that I'm already cooking here. So,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
out
I
seems
totally get
like,
that.
why would I do that? But I do have a soft spot for Harvest. It reminds me a lot of a restaurant I used to work at in Berkeley. Very much like farmers coming to the back door.
Oh,
So, and
wow.
I just definitely have just a soft spot for that really close connection to the land. You
Did you
know,
ever go to Chez?
yeah. I actually worked at Chez Panisse. Yeah.
No freaking way. Did you know Cal
Yeah.
Peternell?
I remember working with them. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had him on the show too. We've had a few
Oh wow.
alumni.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
Joanne
Cool.
Ware has been on the show. She was at
Cool.
there for a while. Yeah, I
Oh
didn't know.
cool.
That's really great.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It
Well,
was
that's a
a
hell of a
really
bragging
amazing
right.
place. The what?
That's a hell of a bragging right, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
pretty big.
Thanks. Yeah. It's definitely a really amazing
You're like,
place
oh
to
yeah, I
work.
worked at Chez. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
really, Chez? That's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah. It was definitely amazing. It definitely has informed a lot of my focus on food. That farm to table thing is just, can't get any better than like super fresh, super local food. I mean, prepared simply,
Well,
that's
Alice
really
kind of brought that all to the Bay Area. She kind of revitalized that whole thing here. So
absolutely.
she's
Yeah,
been
definitely.
a wonder kind as far as that
Yes,
goes.
absolutely.
Catherine, I really want to thank you for being on the program. I hope that you get a chance to
Absolutely.
come back on. I'd love to have you on again. It's been lovely
That'd be
talking to
great.
you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
That was my conversation with food and health writer Catherine McBride. Tune in on Monday, and you can hear our conversation with Michelle Tam, author of the new cookbook Nom Nom Paleo. She also has a website and YouTube videos for Nom Nom Paleo, so that'll be a treat, and that'll be on Monday. Until then, happy cooking.